everyone.
It is time for another What We Read.
That is correct.
I don't even know. I lost track of how many there are.
I believe we are at episode 21, season 4. It's probably not going to be the one, but that's...
I don't know.
That's probably
But
something.
it's pretty cool because we're, again, getting close to 30, and I'm pretty sure we're actually going to hit 30 this time.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Extended season for everyone.
It just means we're hitting our Goodreads book targets, or whatever that is.
We try.
Reading challenge. Viewing challenge. Reading challenge.
What have you been viewing?
What have I been... We have a podcast that tells you all about what we stream. Anyway, on that note...
on to the book. So today I'm going to start by talking about an adult contemporary romance called The Dating Plan, which is by Sarah Desai. The reason I wanted to read this one was the trope in it is that the girl is the sister of the guy's best friend. Well, former best friend. It's kind of like a gray area there. They meet at a convention and they end up agreeing to fake date for their own specific reasons, except that obviously there are some real feelings in store for those two.
It's 2 stars already.
The sadder thing about this is it was a likable book overall, but it did kind of drag a little more than I would have liked it to. Not a lot actually happens if you really look at the book until things start snowballing one after the other towards the end in, you know, true rom-com movie fashion.
Sure,
But, you know, overall it was really likable. I liked our 2 main characters enough to want to, you know, keep reading about them and hope that they finally figure their stuff out and get together. I also really liked the fact that the girl's family, Daisy is the main character, her family is so involved in the story. Like, they're kind of well-meaning, but also nosy, but also, you know, kind of in each other's business. It's that sort of familial situation. And it's very reminiscent of my own family and the families of a lot of my friends, so I get that. So it was really cute. It was entertaining for the time I was reading it, but honestly, it's been like a few weeks and I remember nothing but the bare bones of it, so I guess that tells you a little bit about how I felt about that book, unfortunately. The next book I'm going to talk about is actually a YA fantasy debut that I was looking forward to.
Okay.
When I first heard about it, it kind of gave off some, I guess, gothic vibes because it had like a creepy house in the summary and all of that stuff. And it's a book called Down Comes the Night by Alison Saft. So Down Comes the Night is about a healer named Ren, and she has technically used her healing magic recklessly and sort of against the rules of her country, so she's on probation, but she decides that there's only one course of action that she can take in order to, you know, get back in the good graces of the queen and, you know, the girl that she's in love with who happens to be her sort of co-worker in this story, I guess. And that is to accept this invitation from a sort of reclusive lord to come to his estate and help him heal someone who's fallen sick there. Except that when she gets to the estate in question, which is you know, the isolated household, she finds out that the patient is actually their country's biggest enemy because he's from the country they're at war with. And so these two realize that there are bigger things afoot and they're gonna have to work together in order to, you know, stop a bigger war from happening between all of these countries. I thought I was gonna love this book, I really did, and I know a lot of other people have, so you can take my review with a grain of salt, but honestly, the beginning was very YA tropey and not in the way that I generally appreciate. It was more like, I know where this is going, and that is where it went. You know what's funny? Like, I don't generally have a problem with that, but in this story, I guess it was because I was just like, there's too much of it, and the execution wasn't anything particularly special to me.
Sure.
It felt a little mediocre, which is how I felt while I was reading it. I will admit, like, towards the end, it gets a little exciting when they're kind of uncovering all of these secrets and all of these things, but then it ends kind of abruptly, too. It's a standalone, which, if that's your thing, maybe you'll want to check it out. And it ends on a solid note, but I was like, the entire time I was reading, I was like, oh, I guess I can see where this is going. I kind of know, like, how it's gonna play out. Fun fact, though, the author of this book is a Naruto fan. And I got really excited about that because I did not know this until the end of the book. And then when I thought about it, I was like, oh, I can kind of see that just based on how the story is told. So, you might want to just read it for that, and then we can talk about it, because why not? Yeah, unfortunately, this fantasy debut just wasn't my cup of tea.
Fair enough.
Sad.
We interrupt the usual set of serious reading for my little comic adventures.
Now, don't.
The adventures are in the adventures. Well, the adventures are in comics. They're not comic. I'm possibly comical, but we will find out pretty soon. So real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America Volume 4. Finally, Marvel Unlimited released like the last sort of like issue. Sort of like tied together You know, the Daughters of Liberty, kind of, you know, the myth of Captain America, the legend of whatever, like that entire arc, right? And I mentioned earlier that for any Captain America fans, and I didn't used to be one until Evans, you know, picked up that shield and was like, okay, that is, I'm gonna read Captain Cardboard a little bit more now, because he wasn't so relatable, because he was, you know, very closely tied to like sort of like America and not being American, you know, and that was just kind of like, all right, you've got your thing. It's not like I read Captain Britain either, until she was a mutant, you know. But the only Captain I really liked was Carol Danvers, and she wasn't even Captain Marvel then, right? But Ta-Nehisi Coates' run really just gives so much depth and dimension to both the myth of Captain America, like what he stands for, and at the same time focuses on the man that Steve Rogers is, besides the mantle. And I think that, you know, for me to humanize Captain America by really talking about, but it's Steve. Steve is Cap, but the ideals that Cap stands for are a totally different story. And for those ideals to be sort of like run through the mud so that Steve could sort of come to the forefront, that's what you want to read Ta-Nehisi Coates'. Like, it was a great palate cleanser to the terrible sort of like, you know, Secret Empire type, you know, Hydra version of, you know, Steve Rogers from an alternate universe that ran America and the world to the ground. So I would totally recommend that. Ended really well. Plus, shout out to the Daughters of Liberty. I'm not going to tell you too much about that, but there is a secret organization parallel to Hydra, parallel to all of the other stuff. And they're a bunch of women who, from the foundations of this country, have sort of been, you know, again, Daughters of Libertying. That's the word that we gotta use. All right. And they're cool. On that note...
All right, 2 more books. The first one I'm going to talk about is the book club pick that I read for my book club with my sisters and my cousin Carmela. The book in question is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, which is a relatively new mystery thriller type release. It's about Jane. She has just moved to Alabama. She's a dog walker in a very rich estate area, and she meets the recently widowed Eddie Rochester, and she sort of starts to fall for him and he starts to fall for her, but she is being haunted by the memory of his late wife Bea, who died in a boating accident with her best friend. Except that there's a lot of secrets in both their pasts, and the real question is, can she actually win Eddie's heart for real before all of the things that both of them are hiding catches up to them? And this one isn't really that thrilling, mostly because you could kind of see where everything was going to go from the start, almost. This is another one of those books where I've said this about a lot of books I read this year, but it's one of those books where you just know it's a train wreck and you know it's headed there, but you can't stop watching because you just want to see it unfold. There's like this weird sort of fascination. It's a terrible fascination to have, but there's a weird fascination in seeing characters do questionable shitty things and like end up obviously having questionable shitty results from the questionable shitty things. So that was pretty much exactly what I anticipated it was going to be, although I did like that you could see where the author had drawn some inspiration from 2 classics, Jane Eyre and Rebecca. There are elements of the story, not just the names of course, but there are elements of the story where you could definitely see directly where she derived those details, which I appreciated. We all felt pretty similarly about it. It was kind of lukewarm. Like, it was a fun time just because it read so fast and you were really, you know, left curious like how this was all gonna play out. But for the most part, it was just fine. Like, nothing too special. Yeah, I don't know. I think I maybe thought that I was gonna like it more than I did, because I feel like a lot of people have really enjoyed it. I was just like, it was fine. Nothing to stand out for me. The last book I'm going to talk about is probably, of the ones in this video, my favorite. It is Float Plan by Trish Dollar. This actually kind of reminds me of a YA book that Trish has also written called Start Here, except that this one is more romance-centered than friendship-centered. So in this one, the main character, Anna, she lost her fiance, I don't think it was a full year, but she lost him, you know, some time ago. And her grief has basically buried her. So she's had a hard time, you know, coping with real life and figuring out what she should do. And she gets a reminder that she and her fiance were supposed to go on this sailing trip. They were supposed to do it together on a boat that her fiance had owned and restored, and so on a whim she decides that she's going to do the trip by herself. Which, to be fair, she was fine for the first part of it, but then she realizes that there are a lot of, you know, things that you might need professional or like professional knowledge, or at least someone who has some working knowledge of sailing to help with. And so she hires a guy named Keen to help her with the rest of the trip, like to get to her destination and to get back. And Keen is a sailor. He's also going through his own sort of struggles with circumstances in his life, but the two grow closer together because obviously you're confined in a boat. Who else are you going to talk to, right? And that romance starts developing between them, but they still have a lot to work through before they can get to a happy ending for them both. And I did like this one. It read really fast, which is, I think, is pretty typical of Trisha's books. Like all of the ones I've ever read, they're quick reads. And I am not a sailor. I don't think I would ever be a sailor. I would like to, I do like traveling on any sort of like vehicle, I guess, so I wouldn't mind sailing, but I don't think I could be the one like doing all the actual work of the sailing. But it was fun to sort of watch her journey through, because she went through a bunch of islands, basically, is what happens in the book. And she gets to do all of these touristy activities on the different islands, which was really fun and cool. Plus, it was nice to just escape from the dreariness of winter by going on a trip with this book.
Sure.
I also really like Keen a lot. He's such a sweetheart, and he's Irish, and like...
There you go.
You know, like, first of all, I did not realize he was Irish. Second of all, the fact that he's super capable and he's super sweet to Anna in the book, I'm just like, you can have everything.
That's true.
I think the writing was really good. Her writing has always been pretty stellar overall. The only thing that I feel could have been improved maybe is, unlike a lot of other books I've read where there is a travel component, I don't think the descriptions were quite as immersive. They felt more like observations versus actually immersing the reader in the setting. Other books I've read have done that fairly well, so I could sort of feel the difference. At least in my opinion, there was a difference. I wish I could have personally connected more to Anna and her grief, since that's really what the story is about. Like Anna trying to, you know, work her way through her grief and towards a place of more like, I guess, peace with what has happened and peace with the future that lies ahead of her. So I wish there had been a slightly stronger connection with Anna on that regard. But, you know, it was a good book overall. I can see why a lot of people are really, you know, connecting to it and really enjoying it. So I would recommend checking that one out if you are interested at all.
Fair.
And we've reached the end of this What We Read video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have read any of the books that we've talked about, or you know any other similar titles that you think we might enjoy, feel free to leave us a comment down below. You can find us on all the other social media that's listed down there in the description box. And we'll see you guys with another video soon. Bye!